The music ministry of Narian and Janet. Thank you, Narian and Janet. I'm always so happy when I see that trumpet coming out in the middle of a song. Woo! It brings me joy. Yes.
We love you.
Thank you, Narian and Janet. And thank you, David Trolley, for being here earlier and for all the music you bring us. Thank you, Marilyn and Kevin, for being our Zoom operator. Bob McAvoy, Merry Christmas, Bob, and thank you for recording and being here every Sunday to take care of us. Thank you to Cam Stoffer for that excellent job doing the announcements. I think you should go on radio full time. I think it's just perfect for you. You've got the right voice. And then Marcia Chicotto, our lovely chaplain. Thank you so much. It's always so good to have you pray with us, Marcia. Thank you. Joy. I mean, so excited about this talk of joy, and I haven't been here talking since I did Faith and Hope. I was missing y'all. I was missing doing the talk. And so here I am today, and I have no idea what I'm going to say. Do you believe that? No idea at all. No, that's not true. That's not true. I've got a lot to say, actually. Let's hope I can get through it. But I have to start by the last thing that brought me really joy. I went to my mailbox this week and I opened it up, and there was a brown bubble packed envelope in there, hand addressed to me from Unity Center of Davis. I was so excited. I thought, a package from Unity Center of Davis. What fun. It's Christmas. Oh boy, look at this. And I opened it up. And what was inside of it? Another envelope. I was so glad. And inside, there was also a piece of tissue paper with some stuff in it. And I said, oh, I think this must be the package that they put together for the holidays. Funshine's got hers up. I've got mine here. I was delighted to open up the tissue paper. Well, there was a veritable magical mystery tour inside. I was just like having so much fun, and I thought, oh, all wrapped up carefully in tissue paper. And I opened it up, and there was this beautiful faith ornament. Thank God it isn't glass, or I would have broken it right then. And a candy cane, the cutest little candy cane. Isn't it cute? And I was just filled with joy. I was filled with joy. I was filled with joy last week on Thursday when Sharon Turner came to meditation, and in front of her was a red candle with a faith ornament sitting in front of it. And she was smiling, and it looked so nice. And it was just such an addition to our meditation that it brought me joy. And I thought, what else is going on in this envelope? And so I opened it up, and my God, the Magical Mystery Tour continues. Inside of it was a hunk of concrete and some little piece of paper. And I thought, what the hell is this? I mean, what is this? And oh, thank God, there's directions. Directions were on the inside of the card that said, Christmas is for saying out loud what we think in all our hearts all year long. You've got a special place in our lives, and we thank God for you. And we do, and I do, and you do for each other, I know. What a loving and joyful community this is. And so we thank God for each other. We do. And then there were directions, thank goodness. Oh, a small piece of melting paper. So I'm going to save this in my envelope and bring it with me to the January 2nd service, where I can release and let go, and we can let it melt away. So bring your melting paper with you, keep it in your envelope, and bring some water with you on that service, and we'll let go of anything we want to let go of. And then it really wasn't a hunk of concrete. It's a Jerusalem white stone, and I remember so many white stone services. And Sue Frederick and I are going to bring you the White Stone service on Sunday, June the 9th, where we're really going to take time to come up with a word for the year. To come up with a word for the year. What comes to us? What comes from our Christ consciousness for the year? 2 years ago was the last time I did this, and my word was holy. Scared me. Really scared me. I didn't know what a year of being holy was going to like for be like for Reverend Rich. It worried me. And what realizations I had about holy moving through the pandemic. But more to come about that on January the 9th. What joy this brought me. Thank you to all those that were involved in putting it together, for sending it out. And you know what I heard? I heard that the group that put it together was filled with joy while they were doing it. Isn't it fun that you can do this work and have joy at the same time, to be in the presence of each other and have joy, to be so in touch with the Christ consciousness that you're just filled with that joy. Oh, there's that word, those two words again, the Christ consciousness. Do you think maybe that we're going to talk about that a little bit today? Do you think maybe that this whole year, this Advent season, has been about the Christ consciousness? Yes, we have been studying all year, and we have been moving towards the realization, this rebirth, this renewing of our Christ consciousness inside. And that in itself brings me joy. Watching you all move through this and practice, you realizing the 12 gifts that you have, the 12 powers, and bringing them into your life, bringing prayer into your life, bringing the teachings of truth into your life and using them. You know, the first song that Narayan and Janet sang today was Joy to the World. And when you stop and think about it, when you stop and look at that song, it is all about the Christ consciousness, all about it. When it's about the Christ within, joy to the world, the Lord has come. Well, joy to the whole world. I mean, let us feel joy because the Christ consciousness, the Lord, has come with us, come to us. We were born with it. Into this human experience comes the Christ consciousness. Let every heart receive her King. Let the Christ consciousness be there. Let our hearts open up to it. Faith and hope, peace and love are there all the time for us to go to. And so is joy. We get to choose. Choice point. It's a choice point. Joy or no joy. Am I going to let what I let go of come back and keep me from being joy, or am I going to let it go and be joy? Let every heart prepare him room. Open up your heart and allow that Christ consciousness to be forefront in your life. You are Christ consciousness. Each of you are one in the Christ. You and I are one in the Christ. Every cell in our body is one in the Christ. And so when we open our heart, when we prepare for it, when we allow the Christ consciousness to be fully in our heart, what happens? Heaven and nature sing. Oh yes, heaven and nature sing. All of the universe comes together. The heavens, the firmament, it comes together. Well, it was so simple before we were sending spaceships into the sky and before we knew that the time-space continuum really existed, and no matter how far we looked with the Hubble telescope, it was going on and on and on and on. And so we are right here in the midst of time and space, in the midst of heaven and nature. We are one in that Christ consciousness. You know, that song goes on and says, even when the fields flood and there are rocks and hills and we have to go across long plains in this human experience, that if we just keep repeating the sounding joy, repeating joy, we can find joy in all of that. When you think of, well, I've been thinking of that and the floods and the songs, and I think about the pioneers that went across the United States. I think about those that came across on the Mayflower. I think about slaves that were subject to the slave trade and how they were laid row after row in boats, and how it was like a mountain and a long and a wide field that they had to go through, and how if they must have repeated the sound in joy while they were going through that, when they didn't know where their next drink of water was coming from, or where their next spot to land was, or where their next food was coming from. When we go excuse me, when we go through any of the events in our life that might allow us to move out of joy, we can always find it. We can always bring it there. There's one more verse to that song that we don't hardly ever sing, and I really like it. It sort of sums it up. Joy, unspeakable joy, an overflowing well, no tongue can tell. Joy, the unspeakable joy. It rises in my soul and never lets me go. Yes, that joy that rises in our soul and never lets me go. See, it is about the Christ consciousness. Christ, the incarnating principle of the God-man, the perfect word or idea of God, which unfolds into the true man and is blessed with eternal life by measuring up to the divine standard, thus fulfilling the law of righteousness. Now, what is Charles trying to say there? It sounds so complicated, but what he's saying is, oh, if we just stay with what we're incarnated with, what we came into this human experience with the full presence of the Christ, the word, the idea, God mind produces ideas in this human experience. We are the perfect child of God, made in the image and likeness of this universe. We are each and every one of us, each and every one of us. And living up to a divine standard, well, that sounds awfully hard. But what have we been talking about using our 12 powers for all year? For right thinking. That's the standard. It's just knowing that. It's allowing ourselves to leave error thought and come into right thinking. So divine mind, so God mind produces these ideas into the Christ, and we have everything that we need there, and we get to express it using right thinking or error thought. You've heard that before from me, haven't you? Several times all this year. It must be important. It is important. For what we're told is that thou art my beloved son, in thee I am well pleased. And so when the universe is well pleased, when God is well pleased, we're in joy because we're filled with right thinking. We're filled with right thinking. Christ abides in each person, the Christ in each of us, as our potential perfection. As our potential perfection. When as Isaiah made the prediction of the Prince of Peace coming, he wasn't referring to somebody else. He was referring to you and me, that as soon as we allow that Christ consciousness to come forth in us, when we allow that Prince of Peace in each one of us to come forth and be, Isaiah is there for all of us. The Prince of Peace is already here. It's you and me. We are the anointed one. So I asked you during meditation to stop and think about what keeps you from finding joy. And then I asked you to let it go and turn it away. And I don't know how many of you were able to do that. But if you were, and each of you can, I ask you to remember that. I ask you to remember what the feeling of joy is and what the feeling is of not having joy. And which one would you choose? I'd choose joy. And I have the ability to make that choice in any circumstance, and in any situation, it's not too late. Anytime in this human experience, it is not too late to choose joy in any experience. And I had a great lesson about that we can choose joy at any time over the last couple weeks. I think some of you know that I started ushering again a couple weeks ago, and I'm ushering at the Leisure Center here in Walnut Creek. For the last several years, I was going into San Francisco, and I was ushering at the San Francisco Playhouse and at the American Conservatory Theater at the ACT. But I'm just not comfortable going into the city, and there's no need to really. We've got good entertainment everywhere. And so last Saturday, I was at the Usher Center. I was at the Usher Center leisuring, and it was a good time. I was at the Leisure Center ushering, and there was a performance of Scrooge, the Christmas Carol. You've all seen it, haven't you? I mean, how do you make it through this human experience without seeing a Christmas Carol even once? Well, I was so moved by its statement on joy and about the Christ consciousness that I said, I'm going back again. I'm going back and really take a look at it. So yesterday, I went back and ushered to a full house, which scared me. I haven't been in a full house in a theater of 500 people, all masked up and all checked in for vaccinations. And so I got comfortable and saw A Christmas Carol again. And I want to talk about it with you for just a little bit because it's such a perfect example of making a choice and of where we've been all our life. I mean, the Christmas Carol starts out with joy. When you think about it, there's people walking in the streets and they're singing, why, of all songs, deck the halls with boughs of holly, bring out joy, deck the halls with boughs of holly, fa la 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 la. And there's people selling goods and buying goods, and joy is happening all over the place, except in the office of Marley and Scrooge. Marley and Scrooge were perfect for each other. They were greedy, they were stingy, they were penny pinchers, they got everything. They were takers. This Eric Butterworth would say, there's givers and takers, and Marley and Scrooge were takers. And it's interesting that before Scrooge met Marley, he wasn't really known as a taker. He was having joy. And as we move through the play, we can see him confronted with his joy. Confronted with his joy. What a great event to be confronted with your joy, especially if you're having trouble finding your joy. You see, Scrooge had lost his joy. Scrooge had lost his joy and let it go and denied it. He denied his joy. I deny any power to my joy, and I give way to greediness and stinginess and unhappiness and working all the time and making life for other people miserable. And there was Scrooge telling Bob Cratchit, father of three, Tiny Tim with the withered leg, didn't know if he was going to make it because Cratchit didn't make enough money working for Scrooge all those long hours to really get good care, and there wasn't good care to get. And you could see mixed in with the joy on the streets of people who could afford to buy Christmas gifts were the people that couldn't afford to buy Christmas gifts, but they were standing around a fire, or the warmth coming out of a sore. And they were even laughing because they were joyful that they were warm. They made a choice to be joyful because they were warm. And there's Scrooge in his office as it struck 5 o'clock and it was Christmas Eve, telling Cratchit, well, I think you'll want the day off tomorrow, the whole day off, won't you? Well, I don't know why you need it. It's only Christmas Day, and what a waste of time that is. And meanwhile, I'll be in here working, but you weren't. And Cratchit says, well, if I could, Mr. Scrooge, that would be wonderful. It's only once a year. Yeah, bah humbug, bah humbug. Yes, Cratchit, I know. And so Cratchit leaves and Scrooge goes out into the streets and heading home and makes it miserable for everybody he sees. Makes it miserable for everybody he sees and gets home. And when he gets to his door and he goes to walk in, who does he see in the door knocker but the face of his ex-partner, Jacob Marley? I was sitting in the theater and I thought Sue Frederick was there. There were voices from the other side in the door, and I said, Sue is here. But it was Jacob Marley saying, Scrooge, I died 7 years ago today, and guess what? You're going to be getting an experience tonight. You're going to have some visitors. Well, Scrooge was beside himself, but he came in the house and went up and went into his room and got his gruel and sat down with his robe on, and the doorbell rings. And the first thing that pops into Scrooge's mind is the vision of Jacob Marley. He doesn't really want to go down there, but when he goes to the door, there's nobody there. But all of a sudden, the walls start to rumble and there's noises, and out of the ground flies Jacob Marley, tied with chains to the underworld. They're pulling him back and don't go. And he's Scrooge, Scrooge, I want to warn you what life is like from the life that we've lived in this human experience. And Scrooge is like, Jacob, what are you doing here, Mara? I'm here to tell you, Scrooge, change your ways. And there's going to be 3 visitors tonight to give you a chance to do that. And Scrooge is like, no, thank you. No, I'd rather just get in bed and get up and go to work tomorrow. And the next thing you know, there's Marley is saying, my time here is short, and there he's dragged by the chains back into the underworld, and Scrooge is sweating up a storm and wondering what's going on and dreading the strike of midnight on the clock. And before you know it, here it comes, and here comes this ghost of Christmas past. The ghost of Christmas past. Well, we've got all kinds of Christmases that we could think of, don't we? Some of them bring us joy and some of them might not, but we get to choose. Remember, we get to choose what we remember and what we do with the thoughts that we have. And here comes Christmas past, and Scrooge is trembling, but she takes him on a journey of his past. And he sees the days when he was younger, when his beloved sister comes and visits him and takes him home from boarding school to be with his family, instead of sitting there with his books. And we see him having a great time at Fezziwig's, just having all the joy that you could have. Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig are running around, kissing each other and creating joy. And they say to Scrooge, even at that early age, who's standing there with an accounting book in his hand, Ebenezer, no more work. It's Christmas Eve. And so Ebenezer reluctantly puts the accounting book down. And we also see how Ebenezer had fallen in love with a woman, with a girl that he met at college. But Ebenezer was changing. There wasn't as much joy in Ebenezer's life as there had been since he'd met Marley. He was listening to Marley. He was learning Marley's ways. Marley invited him to be a partner. And the girl that he was engaged to saw the change in Ebenezer. She saw it. Scrooge probably could see it. We can see the change in us when it's made. And we have a choice. What's our choice? Right thinking or error thought? God mind provides ideas that we get to choose. And so we go to our Christ consciousness and we use all of our gifts in there to choose right thinking. But the fiance said, no, you're not the Scrooge I knew. I can't do this my whole life. She made a choice. She made a choice. She used right thinking. And so she leaves Scrooge, and he's standing there with a ring in his hand. And there's the older Ebenezer going, don't let her go. Don't let her go. And Scrooge takes a look at the ring in his hand that she gave him back and says, bah, humbug. The choice was made right there. Bah, humbug. Humbug to this human experience. Humbug to my joy. Scrooge brought those events with him through Christmas past and through Christmas present and into Christmas future. As we walk through Christmas present with the ghost of Christmas present, Scrooge pays a visit to the home of Bob Cratchit and his family. And they're filled with joy, with the withered leg of Tiny Tim and with no food hardly, with a goose the size of a Cornish game hen to feed a family of 5. They're filled with joy, and they stop and pray. And Tiny Tim says, and now we pray for Mr. Scrooge. And the family is, no, for Scrooge. The wife of Tiny Bob Cratchit says, I'll give Mr. Scrooge something. I'll give him a piece of my mind. And Bob Cratchit says, now, dear, it's Christmas. And we have all the love we need for everybody. And all of a sudden she says, yes, dear, we do. And I will drink to Bob Cratchit. I will. I'll do it for you and I'll do it for me. I'll do it for Christmas. And Scrooge is standing there with the ghost of Christmas present watching this and watching them devour their pudding and their side dishes. Very little, but they were filled up. They were filled up and nourished by all the food that was given to them. Isn't that what joy is about? To be filled up and nourished, to be filled up with all of the gifts that we have every day, to not need anything more, but to be filled up what was already given us. And we move through, Scrooge by this time is having a change of heart. He tells the ghost of Christmas present, he's ready to deal with anything and learn about anything that will profit him. The ghost of Christmas present says, anything that will profit you. And he sees these times when he's put profit over love, when he's put profit as right thinking. Instead of hurting other people, instead of being a prophet, he was hurting other people and most likely choosing error thought. Well, he's back in his bed and dreading Christmas future. But the clock strikes again, and in comes Christmas future. And during this time period, he sees that Tiny Tim has passed away. And all that's left was the stick that he used for walking. And there's sadness in the Cratchit home. But they find joy. They find joy. They find joy in the fact that they're going to go to the cemetery every Sunday and visit Tiny Tim. That he is still in their lives. And that his consciousness and what he taught them is always with him. That they're grateful for everything that they have. For Mr. Scrooge, who gives them the little bit of money that they have. For the older daughter that's there for Christmas, that comes home as hard as she works, but she finds the time to come home. And Scrooge sees the beggars, having seen his body being carried away by the undertaker, take his clothes off and sell them for money. Scrooge witnesses and sees it. And all of a sudden, Scrooge finds himself in bed and wakes up. After having a visit from Jacob Marley, the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, and the ghost of Christmas future. And the only thing Scrooge is wondering is, what day is it? Is it still Christmas Day? Do I still have time? And he runs outside in his dressing gown, and he runs out and he goes, Merry Christmas, everybody. And people are so used to Scrooge that they run the other way. What is now? He's really gone over the edge. What's happened to Scrooge? He's telling us Merry Christmas. He's got joy. He's got joy in his heart. And Scrooge finds somebody on the street and says, is that big goose still available down in the butcher shop window? Here's the money. Go buy it. And then deliver it to the Cratchits, and I'll give you a shilling. No, I'll give you half a crown instead. He's giving away all of a sudden. Scrooge has seen the light. Scrooge has made a choice. Scrooge has become aware again of the Christ consciousness that has everything that he needs. Scrooge pays a visit to several people that day and finds joy everywhere he goes. He connects again with his uncle, with his nephew, who he had not been in contact with, who he had said bah humbug to all of his life. He goes and celebrates joy. He sees the Cratchits with a goose on their table that's bigger than the table is. Scrooge is filled with joy. Scrooge is dancing and singing. Scrooge is filled with right thought. Scrooge is filled up with the Christ within. So here we are on the fourth Sunday of Advent. You are joy. You are love. You are peace. And you are hope. And you have all that you need. I invite you to take it with you this Christmas and every day. I invite you to choose right thinking. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Thank you for being here today. Thank you.